All right, so next on the bench is the Centipede board, and it's one that I got on eBay, and it sold for really cheap for two reasons. Missing the processor and the pokey chip, and it's got some pretty significant damage here. I think this might be having to do with the trackball, so maybe they were having a trackball issue and somebody tried to repair it and they really botched it. Now this is after I've cleaned it up. It was even worse. So I'm preparing the area to put a socket there and whatever chip needs to go there. I'll have to look that up. Again, I'm not sure what this is. I think it may be trackball related. I'm not positive. So it's got the ROMs in it. It's got the EA ROM, and I don't see any other chips missing except for the one where the damage is. So let me go ahead and address that. Let me find a pokey and a processor. Now, if I ever get this running, if anybody wants to trade a broken board, a non-working board for this one, this one won't have the processor or pokey because I don't really have very many of the pokies in particular. So I would trade without these, and your board, you would take those out of your board and plug them in to get a working board. So anyway, that's the plan. I have a bunch of these boards already, so I was thinking if someone needed a working board or a board repair, then this would be a cheap, easy way for you to do it. Let me get started on this. All right, so there's some good amount of trace damage here, so I'm going to have to run a number of jumpers. It's going to look like hell, but it should be fine as far as functionality. This chip here was also messed with, so I'm going to remove it and clean that. And basically clean this whole area up. Also notice they replaced all these capacitors for some reason. And they lost a trace, let's see, going from this capacitor over to these resistors, the trace missing, so I'll need to add a jumper there. But yeah, let me start by removing this one here and just cleaning this up and see how it looks. All right, so removing that chip revealed more damage, more trace damage. This is going to be a fun job. Ish. All right, well, let me clean up this area, see if I can get some of that grime out of there. Probably not. It looks pretty burnt and messed up. But definitely that hole there, and also that wire I just lifted. Get it back down. All right, so clean all this up, add 2 sockets, and then route a bunch of jumper wires. I'll be back. So I thought I would just discuss how I'm going to be repairing these. First step is you've got to clear all the through holes for the 2 sockets. And as you can see here, I've completed that task. All right. So both sockets fit in the holes all the way through. Oh, get that one out of there. Where's my pointer? There it is. Okay. So I'm trying to keep as many traces as I can. If there's a trace that's flopping around and stuff, cut it off. And then, but keep as much as you can that's still connected to the circuit board, if that makes any sense. These are basically glued down to the circuit board, to the fiberglass. So after you get all these holes clear, we got to start routing, you know, the lines that pass through it. And I've already connected 3 of them. And you got to make sure it's going to go in between the 2 pins of the sockets that you're installing. So the way I do it is I have some wire wrap wire. It's very thin. I think it's 28 gauge. And I will apply as much solder as I can to tin it, right, to make it where it will want to stick to something when I heat it up. And then I bend out a section that's the length that I need, and I leave it on the wire. So let's see if I can find, it's always underneath something. So here's the wire wrap wire that I'm using. And I will strip some of the insulation off of this. Where's the end of it? I'll strip off some of the end of it. Then I'll bend it into a 90-degree angle so that I can control it like this. All right? And there'll be solder on this. And then you'll just position it over the 2 traces that you want to solder. And you'll heat up one end, leave it on there long enough for it to adhere, and then you'll move the other end, and then it's hard to show with me holding the camera, but In one hand I have the soldering iron, in the other I'll have a small flat tipped screwdriver to use as a heat sink. And then I'll tack down the other side so that it doesn't loosen the solder on the one side that I've already done. And then after you've confirmed that it's good and connected with an ohm meter, you'll snip off the excess line and do it again for the next piece. Now, that's fine for traces that are on the same side and going through and such. What about this line here that needs to go to that hole? Well, what I'm going to do is I'll strip off a long piece, tin it real well, I'll drop it down into the hole, and then I'll bend it over and attach the other side here. Now this piece that's going through the hole, I will make sure that I'm able to connect to the pin on the back side of the board. So that's what I'm going to do for all these that have lines going to it, but the people that removed it decided to superheat it and really, I mean, this is ash, man. It smells like cigarettes or something burned up. And some of these holes are very enlarged. But so that's what I'll do, is I'll drop the line down in there, solder it to the piece, and then on the other side, when I insert the socket, I'll be able to solder the other end of the wire to the pin. All right, so here's an example of what I was showing or discussing earlier. I have the wire stripped back. You see there's a lot of bare wire. I've tinned it so that it will adhere easily to the traces on the board. Then I've dropped it down the hole and I pulled it over to where I want to solder it, and I soldered it down. So now I do a pull test on it. It feels like it's on there pretty good. I will clip that off. The wire is going through the bottom. See it dangling right there? Can't show you because my hands are free. Maybe my pinky right in that area. So that's how I will connect that wire to the pin on the socket that I'm installing. So I've got several more to do. Let me keep going. Well, it took a good amount of time to get it done, but I have it done. So I got the 2 new chips installed, the sockets, and all the missing routes have been added. Several of them I missed when I was doing it, when I was routing with the chip sockets not installed. So I had to add a couple of jumper wires. And then this jumper wire here was missing from the get-go to a capacitor. So I am now to the point where I'm ready to put a processor and a pokey in it, right there, and see what it does. I haven't tested the ROMs or anything like that. I'm just going to put the stuff in and plug it in and see what happens. So this is the first power up of the Centipede board. It's getting 5 volts. Ooh, something's getting hot. Better shut it off. Just burnt my hand. Right over here. Where was it? One of these chips here is getting hot. Doesn't appear to be one of the things that I fixed. Processor and the pokey aren't getting hot. That's good. Something over here. Whatever these are getting hot. Or these proms, I can't tell. 289. 74S289, yeah, that's a prom. If that's why it's getting hot, that might be expensive. Turn it back on. Yeah, that guy right there. Ooh, it's getting really hot. All right, I'm gonna have to take it out and socket it. The chip that I removed is not a prom. It is a 74 S289. I thought it was a prom, but it's not. It's a so it's equivalent to a 7489, which I think is a 4x4 register file. Basically a RAM, small RAM. So I don't have a 289. I'm going to put a 7489 in there. I believe that will work in this particular case. So let me stick that in there. There we go. Don't want to put it in backwards zone. That's what I just did. All right, let me put it in right and we'll power it back up. And I got the RAM in there, or the 7489. And we are getting a picture now. Not much there. Just a weird orange background with some random garbage on the screen. Doesn't really even look like Centipede graphics, but I'm sure it is. All right, so now I'm going to do the usual stuff. Check the clock. Check to see if the processor's resetting. Make sure all the pins are in the sockets, and you know, all the ROMs have all the pins and all that sort of stuff. And after I do the recursory checks, if I find something, I'll let you know. I'll be back. Well, I didn't get very far. I didn't actually test anything. My finger accidentally touched this chip here, and it almost burned it off. That sucker's hot. It's a 2114 RAM. Let me change that and see what happens. All right, replacing the RAM gets us a little further, I guess. We got more garbage on the screen. Still has the same weird orange background. Looks like we are seeing bits and pieces of graphics from Centipede, so more recognizable. I guess I should feel around and see if there's any more chips that are about to explode from power consumption. Boy, I tell you, when I touched those two, that RAM and the register file, boy, it got my attention. It was hot. I need to get a thermal camera or something so I can look at it instead of feeling around for it. Be less painful. All right, I think we're to the point now where I can start doing the recursory checks for clock and such, and see if I can figure out why this thing isn't running. So we have a constant 5 volt, a constant reset going to the processor, pin 40. Pin 40 is there. That is low all the time, so it's in constant reset. If you look at the schematic, reset is generated by a counter and some transistors here that enable the counter. So this is the power on reset circuit. That's failing. We never get the signal on pin number 6 or 7 of the counter. That's L2. So let me go to L2 pin 6. L2 pin 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's low all the time. So the counter is never getting enabled to allow the processor to get out of reset. All right. So the things to check here will be this resistor biasing to these transistors and capacitors to make sure it's not shorted. Make sure the switch isn't in the stuck position, being on all the time. That should be about it. So let me probe around and see if it's a transistor, resistor, or capacitor problem. All right, so I ohmed around the reset circuit, and I had my meter and diode test, and I was testing out the different transistors. There's 3 different ones in that area, and the Q2 guy had a short in diode mode, and then when you would measure it in ohms, it was 22 ohms. I compared against a working board, and it's supposed to be over 100 ohms, so there was some sort of short going on there. I removed the transistor. It tested good. So since the transistor, I was measuring between the emitter and the collector. So the collector and the emitter, I was measuring the resistance there, and the only 2 things that are shared, or there's 3 things that could cause that: the transistor, a resistor which is in the mega ohms, or the chip. So this chip, I pulled it next. It was a logical thing to do next, and that got rid of the short. Now it's reading 100K or something. So I've removed the chip, put a socket, and I still have the transistor out. I need to put it back in. I've got to see if I've got a 7490 laying around. I think I do, but I've got to find it. So if I can find the 7490 in a short amount of time, I'll go ahead and plug that in and continue the testing. Otherwise, I'm going to stop here. So I found a 7490, slapped it in there. Processor's not in constant reset now. It actually is running, and it is running self-test, and I'm getting RAM errors. all 8 beeps sound like the RAMs are bad. So I need to look up and see which RAMs those are. Is that the play RAM? Is that the playfield RAM? I don't know. I don't remember. So I need to look that up in the manual. I don't know if I have it here or not. Anyway, so if you put it out of test mode, you can see the program's trying to run. It shows the high score table. Half the screen, it doesn't make any sense. It's got movement, but it's wrong. This type of stuff where the spider isn't moving around much, that could be a pokey problem. I'm not sure about this pokey. It's one I just grabbed off a board. But yeah, so half the screen looks reasonable, the other half looks garbagey, but the program is running and self-test works. Getting 8 high beeps. All right, well, I think that's it for tonight. It's getting late. Thanks for watching, guys.